Hello, the doc is in, and welcome back to another chapter of Tokyo Revengers, chapter 263, Be Strong. In the last chapter, we have Mikey, how do we put this? Well, actually, this video is not going to be too long, I don't think. So I'm just going to keep it honest. Mikey kicks the shit and beats the shit with his hands out of everybody on the battlefield. And when I say everybody, I mean quite literally everyone. There's not a single person does not catch the fade. Everyone gets the ones. But it's more like 1v100. And Mikey wins. And that's how we end off the last chapter. In this chapter, we get a flashback. But whose flashback could it be? It's Mikey's. And so, let us begin. So, chapter starts off, we see a very young Mikey. Based on the toys and stuff, I don't know, maybe like 3. Let's say 3 years old. And we have him with his father, Mr. Sano, I guess. And he's giving Mikey a toy, and he's like, this is an American superhero. He's very strong and cool. He has an A on his chest. My only guess is that he's supposed to be a Captain America ripoff, which is fair. I mean, it's Captain America. Everybody loves Captain America. Oh, it's 3 years old. Okay. So, I was right. Okay. That was my guess, given I read the chapter before. So, yeah. But anyway, so his father dies in a car crash when he's 3 years old, right? And we then get a little time skip, and so we see a slightly older Mikey beating up a really strong third grader, apparently. Well, allegedly strong third grader. He gets one tapped by Mikey, and Mikey beats him up so bad. Well, not beats him up so badly, but beats him up so easily that he's like, dang, like, you're actually kind of trash. Like, go back to the sewers. And he, in his narration, he says, I hated weak guys. And so we see a little bit of cut ahead, or at some other time he's in the hospital and we see his mother. Ooh, interesting. Mrs. Sano. And so he's talking to her about how he beat up a kid, and we see a through line in his time spent with his mother is that he just tells her about how he beat the crap out of other kids, and she's all for it. She's like, you're a real strong kid, you know. And he's like, I am, aren't I? Just like my dad. And that's interesting. And so my guess is that she's in the hospital because of the car crash. Whatever car crash got him killed, she was also in, and she was injured, and now she's in the hospital. And so he continues to do his thing, beating the crap out of random kids, and he will at a later time go up to his mother and be like, I went out, I beat the crap out of some other kids, and they be crying and just basically making fun of weak people. And his mother is kind of like, well, children cry easily, because he specifies like, when I beat those kids up, they start crying and stuff. And she's like, oh yeah, kids will cry all the time, right? And she's like, Mikey's like, oh, did my father cry easily? And she's like, well, I don't know if he cried in public, so I don't know. The question doesn't technically give a no or a yes. It just kind of suggests that maybe he just didn't cry in public. But, young kid, maybe he didn't like clock that, my father cries too, just in the private of his own home, when he's not beat up on the street by, like a 5-year-old. But anyway, we have some nice moments between Mikey and his mother. It's all great and good. And then we have Shinichiro, all right, kind of into the future further. You have Shinichiro showing up, and he's like, hey, Mom, and I'm assuming he's talking to Emma, Mikey, and he's talking to Grandpa. He's like, hey, Mom is in critical condition. So they all rush over to the hospital, and this is going to be like one of the last times you get to speak to her, whatever. That's what the doctor says, at least. And so everybody gets to meet with her. And Mikey, when he meets with her, he's like, I beat up some more kids. Let's go. And he's like, weak guys cry so fast. And so he says, I'm never going to cry. And so he kind of equates, not crying to being strong. And so he's like, I'll be strong to protect you, so you got to come back home. Kind of like, I guess you could say, he's kind of not acknowledging the fact that, the doctor literally said, this might be the last time you speak to her, but, whatever. And so they're talking to each other, and so his mom drops some important knowledge on him. He's like, you are not strong because you don't cry. Even you as a child, or child being like a baby, you cried all the time. You were like a big crybaby. And we get a picture of baby Mikey, and yes, it is indeed adorable. And so then, Mikey being a kid, he's like, don't talk about me as a baby or whatever. And 3 days after that, his mom died, and everybody's there kind of like seeing her, dead. And everybody's crying. Chu's crying, Emma's crying, Grandpa's crying. But Mikey, he got like a deadpan face when he's with everybody, right? But then he leaves the area while everybody else is kind of like there, and he cries in private, which, as we see throughout Tokyo Revengers, anytime something like really stressful happens with Mikey, he's always chill around other people, but in privacy, he breaks down a lot, whatever. But after this incident, we then see another, again, sometime in the future, we have him saying again, I hate weak people. We have these like, I can only guess maybe like middle school kids, getting mad at him for like beating up their, I guess, Kohai or whatever. And so Mikey, based on his eyes and stuff, it seems like his dark impulses have begun to manifest at this point. And so while they're like pressing him, he then, after a little cut, beats the crap out of all of them and is beating up one of them, hitting them with his classic punch on the ground, one hand on shirt, one hand on face, classic. And the other two kids are like, hey, you gotta chill, you're gonna kill the guy. And I assume he eventually stops. But then we cut away from that, and we kind of cut into the situation with Sanzu and everything, and like the laugh. Once again, this is not an explanation of what happened. All right, let's just get that straight. That's not an explanation of what happened, but it does show that by this point, with all this happening, Mikey's already kind of like, he's kind of he's doing a little bit much, right? And so we cut again ahead even further, and so we actually get to see Sanzu. He has bandages around his lips and around the edges of his mouth. All right, giving me Joker vibes. We have Baji basically being like, dang, you beat up 3 high schoolers who are a part of a motorcycle gang, and you're only in 5th grade? Good way to point out what grade he's in. And we have Sanzu congratulating him, and Baji's just like, what the hell? And so we kind of have Mikey basically being like, weak people, blah, blah, blah. And we have Baji and Sanzu kind of be like, hey, there's this one guy with like a dragon tattoo who beat up some other dudes for whatever reason, just background stuff. And so Mikey's kind of like, I should meet him one day. What's his name? His name's Draken or whatever. And then they start talking about erotic magazine. We're not gonna talk about that. And so we see Mikey kind of walking around one day. This could be in the future, this could be the same day, whatever. But we see him walking around, and he spots Draken. And so then this is kind of like representing the moment of like how they first met and / where they began their friendship and everything. And you have him specify that he loves strong guys. Pause on that. I look crazy. But that's the end of the chapter. It's interesting. Definitely interesting. Gives us a little bit of a origination for why Mikey is the way he is and where his dark impulses could stem from. It seems like with the death of his parents, with the death of his father, he started this mentality of being strong and not liking weak people. And then with the death of his mother, despite her kind of encouraging him to want to be strong, but also kind of encouraging him to kind of like understand that, like, being strong doesn't require that you don't, express your emotions through like crying and some such. It seems like with them both dying, it kind of tilted him down a path of still continuing to not like weak people and wanting to be strong, but then unhealthily handling his emotions and stuff. And so instead of getting upset and crying and like kind of releasing, instead he just randomly gets in fits of rage and then beats everybody up. as we saw with the high schools in this situation, and very recently with Mikey beating up everybody on the battlefield. And besides that, there really isn't too much else to discuss. It seems like we're kind of setting up, and we get a to be continued at the end of the chapter. So in my opinion, I feel like this flashback is not quite over. I feel like we might get a little bit more either in the next chapter or sometime into the future. But otherwise, I think that's it for the chapter. Leave a like if you like the video. Leave a dislike if you dislike. Comment. What do you think of the current amount of reasoning why we have Mikey as he is in, let's say, the Kanto Manji War? How do you think this backstory kind of builds up to that? Do you think it's kind of like a one-to-one? You kind of see how the progression goes, especially with everything else we know about Mikey? Or do you feel like we still need a little bit more on the Mikey side? Like I said, the Sanzu situation, there could be more to that, but I could also see why someone might say, I think that's about it. But definitely this is all just setting up for like what's going on with Mikey. Why is Mikey the way he is? What's going on with that? But nonetheless, leave your comments about those things down below. Subscribe, please. I beg. Do the subscription, please. And yeah, the doc is out. Peace.